Okay, hello. Welcome to this technical webinar on automation with our iConnect product on Power Automate. I'll just give you a little bit of background on myself and Ultimate before I get started. So I'm Simon Bond. I've been with Ultimate Business Solutions for 20 years now. I'm not entirely sure where those 20 years have gone, but I joined as a senior technical consultant, mainly working in network and security and Citrix. So I designed and delivered a lot of Citrix projects for our customers, and then I moved into end user computing and DevOps. And about 5 years ago, Ultima started a robotic process automation team, which I joined as the tech lead to create automations for our customers. And we started finding lots of holes in existing automation products that we rapidly started filling. One of them was automating over remote sessions. So Citrix, for example, it's probably our fault really for installing so many Citrix systems for our customers, but pretty much every automation that we had to do was running over Citrix, which is very difficult to do because essentially it's a remote video session. But also with Ultima being an IT company, a huge number of our automations were based on IT processes. So for example, joiner, mover and lever processes. And we found that most of the automation platforms out there had very, very little in the way of assisting us with the technical aspects of that. So we started developing IE Connect to solve those challenges. So Ultima Labs, who I now work for, we started Ultima Labs about 3 years ago purely to focus on delivering software for the market that can help solve these challenges. So I'm the lead developer of IE Connect and have been for about 3 years now, and I'm going to walk you through a technical coverage of how the product works, how you might use it, what sort of challenges it might solve. It's not particularly PowerPoint heavy. It's mainly an online demo of how to use the product. But I'll have a few slides just to give you some background. We are recording this, so this will be available afterwards if you miss anything. And please feel free to ask questions. They'll be going into a questions panel that I'll be able to review afterwards. It's going to be a little bit difficult for me to review questions while I'm actually delivering the webinar. So I will look at them all afterwards, and we'll send out replies to any questions you might have, hopefully by the end of the day, if not first thing tomorrow. So if I get started on just a few short slides just to give you an overview of what the product is and what it will do for you, and then I'll go hands-on and actually start using the product. So helps if the next slide comes up. Thank you. So iConnect is an automation solution. It's designed to help you automate your business and IT processes. And it sits on top of either Microsoft Power Automate, which is a large Microsoft cloud-based automation solution if you've not come across it before. It also works on Logic Apps, or it works on PRISM, which is an industry-leading RPA product. And we provide around about 800 actions. That number keeps growing. I have to keep changing the slide. Effectively, we're finding holes in those products, things where they don't do it very well, and we add that functionality that's missing, largely focusing on business and IT processes and remote automation. So the kinds of things that you can use IE Connect for would be automating legacy applications. I say legacy, I'm talking like Windows applications, Java applications, web pages. So say you had to automate logging onto a website and looking up some information, taking some data, inputting it somewhere else, that kind of thing. Automating mainframe sessions, SAP GUI, Microsoft Office, that kind of thing. Now, this is typically called robotic process automation when you're automating an actual application in a similar way to that a user might automate that application. Now, we can also automate over Citrix and Microsoft Remote Desktop sessions. This is a huge hole in a lot of automation platforms out there, and a problem that hit us literally from day one. As I mentioned earlier, we have so many Citrix and Microsoft customers, a huge number of things we had to automate were running on some other system that you could only get to by remoting to it, or the application was hosted on an application delivery platform like Citrix, which essentially is a video stream of that application. And those applications are very, very hard to automate. So we have developed IE Connect so you can automate remote applications as easily as if you were automating local, and you'll see that when I start demoing it. And we also provide just over 100 actions to help you with joiner, mover, leaver processes. So this is things like adding users to Active Directory, creating distribution groups, adding users to AD groups, setting up their manager, setting up their email, all those sorts of things. And again, these numbers keep going up. We're constantly creating automations for our customers, seeing things that need to be added and adding them to the product. So as I mentioned, we can integrate with Blue Prism. So if you already use Blue Prism, this is more commonly used by business teams to perform automations of their processes. It's less used by IT teams, but we find a huge number of organizations are using Blue Prism. So if you're using Blue Prism, you can continue to use Blue Prism, and IE Connect seamlessly hooks into Blue Prism and allows you to carry on the way you were and have access to all of our actions. We're on the Blue Prism Digital Exchange, so we're literally very easy to integrate with that product. And then we also have IE Connect for Microsoft's Power Automate. We're fully certified by Microsoft, so all of our 800 actions are right now just available for people to use in Power Automate. As you can see from the screenshot here, if I literally just go into Power Automate and type in IAC, then all of our modules appear, and you can start using IE Connect straight off. So that's the two platforms we integrate with, Blue Prism and Microsoft's Power Automate. But when I say Power Automate, it used to be called Flow, and a lot of people also use Logic Apps. We also integrate with Logic Apps, another Microsoft automation platform. Now, Power Automate's very interesting. Microsoft are aiming Power Automate at a wide range of different types of developers. Now I'll actually start on the right-hand side because that's the background I come from. A lot of automation products are focused on IT and admin people, and they're usually quite complicated. You need to have quite a lot of skills and knowledge of IT to use them, and most certainly those sorts of people can use Power Automate. It's got some pretty advanced things in there if you're already a technical programmer. But there's also people who, it says pro developers here, but I think this would also cover business analysts and people from the business who've got a good understanding of logic. They're not programmers, but they know exactly what they want to do. They understand the logic fully, but they're not coders. And Power Automate works very well from them because it's a very graphical front end. It's low code. You don't have to type in much code, sometimes no code. And the other area Microsoft are focusing on are citizen developers. So these are people who really don't have any coding background at all, but they have processes that they understand and they just want to be able to automate them. And one thing we like about a Power Automate is it's moving more and more into the direction that all three of these groups of people can use it to create automations. So that's one of the reasons why we picked Power Automate as a good platform to sit upon. So that's Microsoft's aim and our aim, to make automation as low code as possible. Every time we go ahead and create an automation for our customers and we see, yeah, there were like 3 or 4 steps here that were a little bit complicated, we do our best to improve the product to remove those complications, make it easier to use. So there's this constant feedback cycle with this product of us trying to continually not only improve it, but simplify it. So there's 2 types of automation you're likely to come across when you're trying to automate your processes. So I just wanted to briefly cover them here. The first one tends to be called DPA, Digital Process Automation. A lot of people in IT just call it API based automation. So this is things where there is a software platform out there already that is fully API integrated, and Microsoft or whichever vendor it is has created a whole load of built-in connectors. So literally drag and drop, you can just start performing tasks in these systems. So an example would be ServiceNow or Salesforce. A lot of these SaaS-based systems that are out there in Azure and AWS. Now, Microsoft provide over 400 connectors out of the box for these types of people. So if you're a citizen developer and you're not used to code, literally out of the box, there are a lot of systems that you can automatically talk to. So we can leverage Microsoft's capabilities in this DPA field. But mainly, it's the new systems that can be automated using DPA. There are a huge number of systems out there that you can't automate that. They're often referred to as legacy applications. It's making me feel my age because I've never really considered Windows applications as legacy applications, but that certainly seems to be how they're being referred to more often these days. So if you've still got lots of systems where you have a Windows application or a Java application or something, and the only way to automate a process in it is to literally load up the application and start using the application like a user, or get some developers to spend a huge amount of time writing an API front end for it, then DPA really isn't the way to go. None of the built-in connectors are going to talk to these systems, and that's where RPA comes in. So this is basically focusing around automating the application as if you was the user. So the automation will literally load the application like the user and interact with it as if they're the user. Now, this isn't blindly moving the mouse around, clicking and pressing keys like you may have seen some systems do. This is intelligently interrogating the screen, understanding what is where, waiting for things to load, waiting for that button to appear, clicking on it. So it is very, very reliable. It's not like send keys, left key, press enter, move the mouse left a few pixels, click. It's nothing like that. It is very, very reliable. And RPA covers anything that DPA can't do. If you imagine DPA, which was the previous slide, is anything where somebody who's already friendly created an API for you to use that you can now drag and drop. RPA allows you to automate everything else, anything that doesn't already have an API. And we're focusing heavily in this area as well to make this as easy for you as possible. So iConnect for Power Automate, it's actually the only enabler that directly plugs into Power Automate and provides you all of this capability. So we were the first to develop a platform that sits on top of Power Automate to provide you all of this capability. So you've got access from one console, one panel essentially, to automate all of your API-based applications, so things like ServiceNow and Salesforce, anything that's DPA, plus RPA, plus anything that has to run over Citrix or remote, plus anything that actually does require the mouse to be moved around. So you get some older applications where literally you do have to move the mouse into that field for the field to highlight in order for you to type. It won't work any other way. We allow you to automate all of those things all from one pane of glass. Okay. That's kind of the slides. I'm now going to start looking at how the parts and the components work, and then I'll move on to hands-on. And most of this presentation is going to be hands-on. So this is a very high-level, non-technical slide, but I'll quickly cover it. This really just describes what I've just said. So you have the Power Automate Cloud Flow system that's obviously based in the cloud, and there are built-in connectors for it to talk to over 400 different systems out there, out of the box. Examples being Office 365, Salesforce, Dropbox, ServiceNow. The list grows continually. And then iConnect allows you to get to all those on-premise legacy applications. I hate calling them legacy applications when they're Windows apps, but Office, this is local Office as opposed to a cloud-based Office, Java applications, SAP, mainframe sessions, all of those types of applications, and you can access them and interact with them from the same flow at the same time as you're talking to stuff in the cloud. And then if you have any applications that are harder to get to because they're hosted remotely somewhere, that could be Citrix, that could be Microsoft RDS, it could be Windows Virtual Desktop, which of course is now called Azure Desktop. And you can access all of those as well because iConnect can automate over the video channel into the remote application that's hosted, let's say, for example, on Citrix. So wherever your applications are, whether they're easy to get to or hard to get to, iConnect is going to allow you to get to them. I'm not going to focus on this slide anymore because I've got some more technical versions of this slide that will help me describe this better, I think. So looking a little bit closer at what the components are, and I hope that people can see my mouse. So we have the Microsoft Power Automate platform, which, as you know, is a cloud-based automation platform, and we're trying to automate something that's on premises. running in a VM, maybe a Windows application or something. How are we going to get our instructions from Power Automate safely to this pool of VMs that you have got available for automating your Windows process? So we have a product called the iConnect Orchestrator that I'll be showing and using very soon. This is a web-based application that runs in your tenant. So we provide installation software and documentation explaining how to build it, but it's entirely in your Azure tenant, not ours. It doesn't foam home anything. So effectively, it's a closed system, and it is the gateway between Power Automate and your on-premise VMs. And effectively, your on-premise VMs all phone home to the orchestrator using an outbound HTTPS connection, so there's no need for any incoming firewall rules or anything. And then once all your workers have all phoned, sorry, we call these virtual machines where you're performing on-premise legacy automations. We call those iConnect workers. So a set of iConnect workers have phoned home to the orchestrator. The orchestrator is tracking them, checking their availability, seeing which ones are in maintenance mode, which ones are busy, which ones aren't responding, and it works out effectively which worker it should use next for the next piece of work. So the orchestrator is like a key linchpin to this whole thing. And Power Automate can talk to our orchestrator using connectors. So the great thing about Power Automate is anybody, any third party, can go and develop and certify connectors that basically teach Power Automate how to perform new tricks, basically. So we've created, as I mentioned earlier, 800 actions. These actions are presented to Microsoft through these connectors. Microsoft certify them, add them to their store, and then they're immediately available. So Power Automate is therefore able to talk to your orchestrator, because each of our customers would have their own orchestrator. Effectively, when you set it up, it asks you, where's your orchestrator, what are the security details, etc. And then making use of REST, although this is all pretty much invisible to you. So this bit's only interesting to you if you're into these sort of network protocols, but essentially it all looks after itself. So Power Automate has all these actions that it's running. They automatically make it to the orchestrator. The orchestrator works out what resources you have and what's the next available resource and goes off and uses it. And then in addition, it stores anything that's secure, passwords or any information that you want to be secure in Azure Key Vault, which is Microsoft's go-to vault for storing anything secure. Now, should you wish to store things elsewhere, let's say, for example, you don't use Azure Key Vault, there are options for storing credentials in other places, but out of the box, Azure Key Vault is the obvious place to store the data. Now, if you've got more than one worker, so in this case, I've got 3, they're all phoning home. The orchestrator's tracking them, working out, oh, this worker's busy performing one flow, or another flow is going off to Salesforce. Oh, and there's a third flow just come in. Okay, I've got a spare VM. I'll send it to that one. So it's constantly tracking your pool of VMs, working out what availability you've got, working out which flows to map to which VMs. If you have no VMs available, it kind of puts a pause on Power Automate. Doesn't fail or anything. It just says to Power Automate, could you just sort of try again in a few minutes? And effectively, it keeps Power Automate waiting while there's no resource. This is if you're trying to perform an automation that's running on a VM. And then if I extend the diagram a little further, so this top section here hasn't changed, it's just moved slightly. So the piece that we've added is a remote session. So Citrix or virtual app, Citrix, which could be desktop based or apps. So the old name was Apps and Desktop, the new name is Virtual Apps and Desktops, or Microsoft Windows Virtual Desktop, Remote Desktop Services. So effectively any of these remote platforms where effectively you're having to remote to another computer. We find a lot of these. We find a load of examples where the customer gives us a set of automations to perform, and a load of the applications we need to perform, we can just install directly on these VMs. You know, Office, obvious, web browser, no problem, a couple of Windows programs. But there will always, well, not always, but there's regularly the customer will say, oh, right, yes, we've got this door entry system, and you can only get to it by RDPing to this other computer. Oh, yes, and our Cerner medical application and these 3 other apps, they're only hosted on Citrix. And often Citrix that's hosted by somebody else. We find this quite regular, that some of the applications they want to automate are running on somebody else's Citrix system. And iConnect will allow you to get to all of those, because iConnect automates in a non-technical way. It's essentially automating down the video stream that you have connected. So if you imagine that you have remote desktop to another computer, and you've got your video, you've got your keyboard, your mouse, and as you move the mouse, it's sending mouse coordinates to the other system, and the other system is sending video back to you on what the desktop now looks like. This all runs down something called virtual channels, and essentially we're leveraging those virtual channels to add ourselves essentially as another device. So we can start sending messages down these virtual channels saying things like, please load this program, wait for this window to appear, right, that button there, press it. Right, now wait for this next window to appear and input some text. So we are effectively making use of what would normally be sending keyboard, video, and mouse into a remote system, and we're sending instructions down that channel. Now that all runs down the video channel essentially, so we don't require any extra firewall rules or anything. If you can remote to a remote computer, then you've already got all the connectivity you need to perform automation. So what we're really saying is, wherever the software you want to automate lies, whether it's already in the cloud, so Salesforce, ServiceNow, Office 365, that kind of thing, or whether it's, I hate to say this, a legacy application that's running on a VM somewhere, or whether it's even deeper into either a third-party system or a Citrix system, we can get to it. And we'll allow, and we have full functionality regardless of whether it's remote or whether it's local or whether it's in the cloud. I should also point out that these VMs don't actually have to be on premises. They could be hosted in Azure, they could be hosted in AWS. They are essentially a VM that is able to run the legacy software that you need to run. Okay, so let's start actually looking at the product and start using it. Now, most of the screenshots that follow are only in case my computer decides to fail. It hasn't failed yet, so I'm going to escape out and start looking at a real system and actually start creating some automations. So if you remember, the linchpin of the whole thing is this orchestrator. This is the component that acts as a gateway between Power Automate in the cloud. So here's Power Automate. This is Microsoft's Power Automate platform. As I said, it used to be called Microsoft Flow. And the orchestrator is our gateway to all the different VMs. So the first thing you would do, obviously, is register all of your virtual machines that you're using with it. So these are designed to be load balanced. So you might only have 3. You know, if you decide that you've got enough automation work coming in that it's going to keep 2 machines busy, and you're going to have 1 machine spare in case something goes wrong. You know, like in case machine 1 stops responding for some reason, and the system automatically load balances and works out what the next available box is. And this is a live view, so you can see that, you know, some of my machines are in maintenance mode. Some of my machines are connected. One of them isn't licensed for some reason. I can go and see a full set of details as to what's going on these machines, what version of the software it's running, etc. So I've got a fairly good view as to what's going on, and it's pretty clear to me that I've got 3 machines that are available for work. One's not licensed, but that's obviously pretty minor. And it's easy to add new workers. It's easy to specify how do those workers get to the orchestrator. We support a number of different technologies out of the box, basically to try to fit in with whatever Azure technology you may already have. And that could be none, in which case that's fine. Out of the box, we automatically set up an Azure WCF relay, which effectively requires you to have no prior Azure infrastructure. It just works out of the box. But if you already had a complicated set of networking, you've already set up VNets and so on, then that's fine. We'll leverage whatever you've got. So effectively, you've got one pane where you can see which workers are available and which ones can perform work for you. At the same time, you can see what's been going on. So you can easily see all the work that's been going through the system. So you can identify if there's been any failures or anything unexpected going on. Now, everything is available via an API. So while some people might come in here and manually look at this, you're almost certainly going to present this into something like Power BI, or some other data visualization product that you may have. I'll show you Power BI in a little bit, because that's what we use out of the box. So we give you basically a whole lot of information about what has been going on, which worker it ran on, how long it took, what went wrong, and also information about availability. So you can see that every time a flow came through, how close were you to running out of workers? Or did you run out of workers? Did you actually have periods of time where there were no workers available because there was so much work going through the system that there were no workers available, and therefore the flow had to pause for a little while. So this can help you with availability. Again, this would all be presented to Power BI, so you get a graph of data. But if you can imagine that this is effectively the central hub for controlling the system, routing traffic to the right worker, and giving you reporting data so you can see what has happened. It's also a place where you can store things like credentials. Now, you might choose not to. You might have your own credential vault, but anything you store in here is ultimately getting stored in Azure Key Vault, and these are automatically picked up and used by your automations. So, for example, if you were trying to automate a JMR process, and as part of that, you've got to connect to Microsoft Exchange, you could go and create a Microsoft Exchange credential, tell the system what's the Exchange address, how do we connect to it, what's the credentials required to access it, and then our flows will automatically know how to make use of that. So effectively simplifying your automation, so you don't have to keep connecting to systems and specifying usernames and passwords. This is optional. You don't have to use it. If you prefer to store your secure details somewhere else, then that's fine. The automation can just access them directly. I'm not going to spend too long on the orchestrator now. Hopefully you've got an indication that this is the central orchestration device that's controlling all your flows. And remember, that's going to mean that anything that you write in Power Automate is going to, well, either go straight to the cloud because you're automating something like ServiceNow or Salesforce, or it's going to run an action like this one, launch process, and the system is going to go, right, okay, I haven't allocated a VM for this. I will immediately allocate a VM out of this pool of workers, send that job and the rest of the whole flow to that same VM. And then when it's finished, I'll go, right, okay, that VM's now free. I'll clear it up. It's available for another one. All of that's taken off your hands. It just happens automatically. So that's the orchestration piece. How would I create a flow? Because that's my first goal, I guess. So I'm going to start with RPA. I'm going to focus on, because RPA is generally the harder thing. I want to automate some legacy applications that haven't got an API. The only way I can perform this automation is to manually load the application, input some data, get some data out, and then take that data and go and do something with it, like maybe feed it into some other system. So we're really in the RPA territory here of having to interact with the computer like a user. So you can use our inspector for this. So our inspector is a web-based app, as you can see, and it's designed to allow you to model whatever application it is you want to automate. So different applications need different ways of automating them. So we have a whole different bunch of modules for the most suitable one. So UIA would allow you to control most Windows applications, and that would include the new Windows apps that the name keeps changing, doesn't it? They used to be called Metro apps, then modern UI apps, but let's call them Windows 10 apps or Windows 11 apps, the new ones that you get from the store. So this would allow you to control most of those types of application, but it wouldn't allow you to automate most Java applications, which have a mind of their own and behave differently. So we have a separate module for automating Java. And if you were trying to automate web-based applications, so for example, load the Chrome browser, go to this URL, log into this web page, press this tab, hit this button, you'd be better off using our web modeler. The UIA modeler would be able to do some of it because obviously it can see the screen, it sees what's going on, but our web modeler would be much better at doing that. And if you were trying to automate SAP GUI, none of these APIs work with SAP GUI, so we implement SAP's own protocols for controlling SAP. If you're a coder and you need to write some real custom stuff, then we support PowerShell, C# bb.net, so you can literally write your own code and we will execute it wherever you want to execute it. Anyway, I'm going to start with the most common module, UIA. So I wish to model a Windows application. Now, if you remember, I mentioned earlier that we're not just randomly moving the mouse around and clicking using send keys or anything. UIA and all RPA is about inspecting the screen, understanding what's on the screen and interacting with it, even if the window isn't quite where you expected it. So I'll just show you that in action. If I hit get desktop elements, I'm asking iConnect, can you tell me what you can see on the screen? And it's come back and said, here you go, I found a whole bunch of things. And if I hit identify, you will see that was the taskbar, that was the Chrome browser that I'm using right now. That's the other Chrome browser that's half hidden, as you can see behind the screen. That's that Windows PowerShell module. That's iConnect itself. This GUI doesn't always appear. I've just put it in visual mode. So effectively, as you can probably imagine, we're talking to Windows directly, and we're asking Windows what's on the screen. If I move these windows around, it doesn't have a problem realizing that they've moved, even if they're half hidden. Well, I have no idea what just moved back there. Let's do the PowerShell one. If I can find the PowerShell window. There you go. So even if the window's moved, even if the window is completely obscured and can't be seen, the system still knows where it is. It can bring it on top to make sure it gets focused, for example. So we're not blindly pressing keys or moving the mouse around. We're directly interacting with the Windows operating system, asking it where things are. And we're doing the same if we're automating over Citrix or RDS. We're just sending a message down the video stream to that remote system saying, could you tell me what's on the screen so I can interact with it? So now you understand kind of how we're interacting with Windows. Let's start and actually create a process. I actually want to build a flow that automates something. So I'll automate this door entry tool. This is a little tool that's used to give people access to the building. Hardly used anymore now. We're all working from home. So essentially, if I just show you what a human would do if they were driving the program, they would log into the system and they would go and add a new user, and they specify what buildings they have access to and give them their photograph, and it will go and print their badge essentially and give them access to the building. And as part of our join and mover leaver process, I want to automate this tool, and it's only available as a Windows app. I can't get to the database directly. It uses some kind of proprietary database, pretty typical. So I need to use RPA to interact with it. So I guess the first thing our automation would need to do is launch the program. So I will go and find the details of the program I want to run, tell iConnect that I'd like to run it. So iConnect goes off and runs it, should find the window. Okay, don't know why I didn't do that, but it launched the program, so that's a good start. And I want to copy this into my flow. So I'll go back to Power Automate and I'll create a flow. Now, there's lots of different ways of triggering a flow. A common one might be that people send emails to the robotic automation asking it to do things, or it might talk to ServiceNow and pick up tickets, or whatever ITSM system you're using, or it might hook into your HR system. There's a huge choice of integrations available for what starts a flow and what ends a flow, but I'm just going to go for an instant manually triggered flow because that helps me show it to you. So I'm just going to go door entry webinar demo. Right. So I now have a flow and I want to now start automating. So I've told, wrong screen, I've told iConnect that I wanted to launch the door entry tool. I'll just do that one more time. I'll go run program. So it's gone and run the door entry tool. I'll go copy, and that has now literally given me an action that I can paste into Power Automate. So it's taken the details of what I asked it to launch, created my Power Automate flow already. So what's the first thing I want to do? Well, I want to wait for the window to appear because, you know, some programs are like, it might take a while to load. So I can't just immediately start interacting with it. I've got to wait for the window to appear. So I'm going to go locate element, and I'll find something suitable to automate with. So as you can see, I can see anything that's running on the local computer, so I can sort of navigate around and hunt down what it is I want to automate. And I want to automate or wait for this window to appear would be my obvious first step. So it says here, yep, I found a window. It's owned by this program, and I can move it around just to make sure it continually identifies it. Yep, it's definitely found my window. So what do I want to do? Well, I want to wait for it. I want to wait for this window to appear. So I'll call it door entry login window, for example, and I'll hit copy, and I'll go to Power Automate and paste it in, because we've automatically created the entry. So we've told it all the details of this window that we need to look for. And you can go and tweak them. You can do some advanced modeling, which I'll show you how to do later on. But out of the box, more often than not, what it comes up with is fine. Is 10 seconds enough to wait for this window to appear? Sure, I'll make it a bit higher. It doesn't matter. This will succeed the second the window appears. So what you're saying is I'm prepared to wait for up to 15 seconds for that window to appear. And now what do I want to do? Well, I want to input into these fields. So fine, locate, search. Now, because it found an edit field, it guesses that the most likely thing that you want to do is input text. You can go and change your mind, but most likely you want to input text. It allows you to perform live tests to actually make sure that this thing actually works. So I can hit perform, and you can see it's done it, because you get some applications that don't interact with a particular API. So this allows you to actually confirm, for real, that this application is definitely reacting to iConnect, and it is, as you saw. So now I know that that works. Again, I hit copy, I go back to Power Automate, add it in. We've automatically taken the operator field. You might decide that that's a variable that you wanted to feed in, because maybe you want to log in as different people, but just for now, this is adequate. And then what I want to do, well, I want to input the password. Now I want to input a password rather than a user. I'll perform the action just to see if it works. Yeah, it does. Right, fine, copy. And you can see that you can pretty quickly start creating your automation once you get used to it, and once you stop talking, you can be pretty quick at this. So as you can see, I've created a pretty quick automation there. So launch the program, wait for it to appear, input the username and password, press the button. Now, because this is my development system, I have to do one extra step if I actually want to demo this, which is I have to tell it that this machine is free. Normally this happens automatically, but this is my dev lab where not everything works the way it should. So I'm just telling Power Automate here that whether any of these steps succeed or fail, could you tell the orchestrator that this flow is finished? So that means that whatever happens, that worker gets freed up for the next job that comes in. Because you imagine hundreds of these jobs running, they're all getting queued up. There could be 3 or 4 VMs taking the work for hundreds of flows coming in. The system wants to be able to rapidly go, right, that worker, I'll use worker 1, I'll do all this, done. Right, worker 1's now free again for other work, while workers 2 and 3 were busy running some other flows. So I'll hit save. I actually need to tell it which of my orchestrators to run on, because typical, I have multiple orchestrators. That probably will do. Oh, yes. Normally, it doesn't copy the password over, because obviously normally you wouldn't want to just take and put a plain text password in here. You'd want to go and store the password in Key Vault, or enter it into our orchestrator. If you remember, the orchestrator can hold all your credentials. To save time, because I haven't got much time, I'm just going to enter password and hit save. So the orchestrator thinks my worker is available for work. I have set it up to force it to go to this worker, which is the machine that I'm doing the demo on. So if the gods of demos are working for me, this should work. I love doing a live demo. Well, nearly. It launched the door entry program. I think these instructions went to a different orchestrator because I've got so many different orchestrators out there. This is what I love about live demos. So I won't waste any time trying to work out what went wrong. But hopefully, yeah, it got sent to the wrong box. Hopefully you get the idea, at least, as to what would have happened if all the instructions had gone to the same place. That effectively it launched the process, waited for the window, inputted text, told it to free up the worker, move on to the next one. So that was nearly automating a Windows application. I wanted to quickly show some more advanced things where, because not all applications are as simple as this one. As you can imagine for the demo, I tried to pick one that's relatively easy to show. I just want to briefly show you some examples of things that can be a nuisance to automate and that iConnect makes easy. So let's take this field here. So we've got a panel that's got 5 edit fields. So if I go and hunt this down, and let's say we call this add new user, and now let's say we go and find one of these edit fields. Okay, so I want to input text into this age field. I'm not 25, but wish I was. There you go. So how did it know to go into that edit field and not the other ones? And it's because not only is it an edit field, but there's other pieces of information that go with it that make it unique compared to all these other fields. So iConnect knew, right, I understand which one you want to input into. You often get some nasty applications where you just have a bunch of edit fields and the only thing that you can pick up on is that they're edit fields. So how do you tell it which one to input into? So you can make use of our advanced modeler and start telling it slightly more complicated things. So for example, imagine it didn't have a class name and imagine it didn't have an automation ID. So all I know is that I'm searching relative to the add new user screen. Remember, that's the screen I found earlier. So I know it's in here somewhere and I know it's an edit field, but that's all I know. So how can I make it reliably edit any one of these fields? So this is where you can start making use of our advanced searches. So if you knew that it was the top field, for example, I could say, well, give me the first one from the top. So if I go identify, it finds the top one, second one, third one. Okay, so if you knew, well, they always appear in a certain order. I know I want to input into the third field. That might be adequate. Or it might be that you know it's the first narrow one. So I could say the width has to be less than 200. I'm actually guessing these numbers. So let's try that. And you can see it's now found the first one where the width was less than 200. So it skipped the top two. If I swapped it on its head, then it would find that one. And if I knew coordinates, so let's say, for example, I'd already worked out that it's the one that's to the right of the label that says age. Well, the label's easy to find because it's actually got words on it. So I might have said, find the age label. Oh, right, I've got its coordinates now. Brilliant. Okay, well, in that case, I want to find the one where the top edge is greater than, I'm guessing, 300. Okay, I found that one. Let's try 400. Right, there you go. So if you knew the location of something else, you can specify coordinates relative. So essentially, and I'm only just starting to scratch the surface. So essentially, we've got a huge number of controls that allow you to automate easily, even if you've got an application that's a real nuisance that to automate and doesn't want to automate. I wanted to briefly show you how some other types of application can also be hard to automate and how iConnect gives you access to them. So for example, if I ran a Java application, this is a text editor, but it will do. If I were to try to use UAA, oh, I can't see inside it. And that's because Java applications are written using Sun's, or Oracle now, their own development toolkit, Windows itself doesn't know anything about the program other than it can find the outer edge of the window, it can find the toolbar, it can find the minimize controls, because you can imagine this bit is actually controlled by Windows, but it cannot see inside the program because it's a Java app. And that's when you would just switch to our Java module, connect to the Java system. I happen to know that the Java runtime installed on this computer is 64-bit. If not, you would tick the 32-bit one. And now I'm talking to the Java system. I have another page that you can probably see is exactly like the UIA page, but it's interested in interacting with Java. We changed the color to make it clear that you're interacting using a different API. And if I now start using the mouse, you can see that I can now see inside this program. So effectively what I'm saying is automating applications isn't as easy as it looks. There's lots of different types of app, each requiring different inspection techniques and APIs to automate. And what we're trying to do is make it very, very easy for you to be able to do this. We've done all the sort of hard work of handling all these different types of application. So in this case, I identified a file menu, I think. So I could say, press it, for example, and you can see it reacts to me. If I was to do the same for web, I won't go into them, but if I was to do the same for web, or if I was to do the same for SAP, you'd hit the same problem that, you know, UAA and Java wouldn't be able to see inside SAP GUI. So you would use our SAP modeler, which again works in just the same way. You just tell it which tool to use. I'll briefly show you the web one just so you get an idea. But let's say, for example, I wanted to launch Microsoft's Chromium Edge browser, because as part of my automation, I needed to go to a website. Obviously, Google's not likely to be a URL that I go to. And once I'm on that page, I'd like to find an input field. And I'd like to put some text in it. Hopefully you get the idea. Again, everything that we do looks the same. So all of the different screens all are very, very similar. You can perform actions live to test that they work. You can hit copy, and that copies it to a flow. So that hopefully gives you an indication that regardless of the type of application you want to automate, we're making it easily accessible, easy copy actions so that you can copy all of these into Power Automate with this example flow that I had here. I wanted to briefly show you Citrix and RDS, just so you can see the challenges that they generate, because they really do generate a challenge. So an example here would be, I'm going to log on to a Citrix system. Now, we support either desktops or apps. A lot of people publish their Citrix applications, and you can do the same with Microsoft RDS as well. With using an RD gateway, you can have your applications published, and users just log into a web portal and click the program that they want to launch. For simplicity, I'm just going to launch a desktop, but our product operates identically, regardless of whether it's a remote desktop window or a remote app. So Citrix session launching here. Fine. Now, our agent needs to run in a remote session in order for us to send instructions down the video stream. Now, you might be thinking at this point, well, how am I going to install an agent in a remote Citrix environment? That's going to involve a lot of red tape, surely. So we've intentionally made it so that our agent is a standalone executable. Nothing needs to be installed on Citrix. This is actually sitting on a file share. If you go and look at the properties, it's just sitting on a file server. So all you have to do is give the Citrix administrators a standalone executable and say to them, can you just put it on a file server somewhere that I could access from Citrix? And that's it. This tool runs as whoever I logged into Citrix or RDS. So anything I say Citrix, I also mean RDS or Windows Virtual Desktop or Azure Desktop. It is running as me. So it didn't require any admin rights, doesn't require any registry keys, no DLLs. It's literally like a little standalone exe that you might run off a memory stick. So we've intentionally designed it that way so that it's very easy to get it integrated into a remote system. As I said earlier, put it on a file server and you're done. And now it's running. Now I can automate in this remote session as easily as if it was my local one. And I'll just briefly show you that. So first of all, let's just try finding something. So remember, this is a video stream. So if I were just to go locate element and move my mouse around, here's the problem that many RPA or RPA platforms out there will get. They can't see inside this window. If you actually ask it what it sees, it says, well, I can see this graphics renderer. I don't know what it is, but I can't see anything inside it. Well, of course you can't. This is video. I'm remotely controlling a remote computer and it's sending video to me. It's like being in a Teams session and trying to automate someone's desktop via Teams. You're not going to do it. But with iConnect you can. So you can just say to the system, well, what can you see? Oh, okay, I can see a local agent that's running here. I can see a Citrix session. Well, fine, let's just attach to it. And now if I start trying to find things with the mouse, there you go. I can now see inside the Citrix session. I'm sending messages down the video stream, asking the agent, tell me what you can see, and then back down the video stream, it's sending me enough information that I can locate the thing that I wanted to automate. And the same would be if I were to have to automate something over RDP. So if I had to kick off a remote session via RDP, nope, it would be exactly the same. The automation's identical. You could literally automate an application locally and then transition it to running over Citrix with almost no change, because iConnect works identically whether you are running locally or whether you are running remotely. So very, very briefly, if I just quickly go and launch iConnect in this remote session, then I can see the available sessions. I can attach to RDP, and now I can immediately start modeling in my RDP session. Not in a Citrix session, can't see inside Citrix anymore, can't see local anymore, but I can see what's going on in my RDP session. And then again, my automation might finish in the RDP session and I could switch back to local and then continue modeling. And now I can't see inside the RDP session anymore because it's video. I can't see inside Citrix, but I'm now back to automating my local applications. So as you can probably see, we really are trying to make it as easy as possible for you to automate. So that covers RPA. I'm seriously running out of time here. So the last thing, very briefly, that I wanted to show is that we also provide a full set of automations for joiner, mover, and lever processes. So if I just briefly edit one of them, so you can see what one would look like. It's a very similar concept to all the other flows, and we have actions like adding users to Active Directory, creating mailboxes in Exchange, or creating a mailbox in Exchange Online, Office 365, or adding a user to Azure AD, synchronizing between on-prem AD and Azure, adding users to groups, all of the types of things that you might have to do as part of a joiner, mover, or lever process. We offer those via an API as well. And it's literally as simple as just going add an action. Remember, we are authorized and certified by Microsoft, so I can just go iConnect JML, and here are all our actions. There's over 100 actions that we provide that allow you to easily automate your JML processes. Now, typically a JML process will be not just Azure, Office 365 and Exchange, for example. It will also probably require you adding them to a couple of portals, maybe loading up a Windows app and giving them access to the door entry system or the gate that lets them in the building, or as into the car park. Normally, a JML process is a mixture of DPA, JML, and RPA in order to end-to-end cover all of those actions and automations that you would need to do as part of joining a user to your organization. So hopefully what you're getting from this is that this platform is designed to cover a very, very wide range of areas and does them in depth and competently, and more importantly, also easily. It's not hard to drive. So you can drive this thing yourself to create your own processes, or we can help create them for you. That's around about all the time I've got. Hopefully that was clear. If you've got any questions, I'm afraid I haven't been able to look at those questions while I'm talking, but I will review them all and answer them, and we'll send them out. We'll be sending out this recording. If anyone wants to see any more demos, please get in touch with us. Again, if you want to understand how this will work in your environment for your processes, again, we can have a meeting and go over it and understand how this will work for you. There's also a trial. There's a 30-day trial, fully featured, that you can download right now from our webpage. Just go to ultima.com, pick Ultima Labs and the trials there, and then you can try this out for yourself. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Hopefully this was useful for you, and hopefully some of you will get in touch and we'll talk further. So thank you very much.